Hello, friends. Welcome to Downtown Rotary. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to invite Eric Erickson up for our invocation.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance to meet in person today. We ask that you bless these conversations both on stage and around these tables. Thank you for this meal and for those who prepared it. Today, Lord, we ask for your peace to be spread throughout this world to help end conflict without the loss of human life. Give peace to the families whose loved ones have been lost or wounded during their duty. And grant the fruits of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control to those who direct the lives of our servicemen and women. And thank you for instilling the spirit of service above self in the hearts of those who defend democracy both home and abroad. In your name, amen.
For those who I have not yet met, my name is Cindy Peterson. I am on the board of directors, and I'm so pleased to be leading today's meeting and to have all of you with us today. We have a few guests with us, and I'd like to invite those individuals to stand and be welcomed. Guests today? All right. Paul, thank you for coming today. Every time you walk into Rotary, I hope you've had an opportunity to shake hands or say hello to a fellow Rotarian. And I'd like to thank our greeters for June. Eric, thank you for coordinating all of these pieces and bringing all of us together in person. I love that you mentioned that in the invocation today. But I particularly would like to thank Tom Herbold, Nicole Tupman, Chuck Hyatt, and Ryan Howlett for being greeters. Can you help me thank them as well? We have some Rotary business for today. We've got some new inductions, new members, and I'd like to invite Tom Gage up to introduce our new Rotarian, Joe Bunkers. Tom, Joe.
Yes, hello, fellow Rotarians. 20 years ago, when I became a member of the Downtown Rotary Club, and it's been just a pleasure to be mentored by so many fine business people over the years and helping me become a better community leader. So it's with my privilege this morning to introduce to you Joe Bunkers. We hired Joe at Gage Builders 22 years ago today. Joe was hired as a drafting person, and he spent the first year doing that. But he, leadership qualities came to the surface right away, and became a quality control manager of a position that he held for 10 years after that. Then he became the vice president of our sales. And then just 2 years ago, he became vice president of operations. Tom Kelly, who was a former downtown Rotarian and a good friend, I think, of many of you in this room. Tom and I would have many conversations over the years about who would eventually succeed him as the president of Gage Brothers. And Joe's name always kind of rose to the top as we had these conversations. And as you know, unfortunately, Tom Kelly passed away tragically and unexpectedly last year. And Joe, at that time then, assumed the role as president and now chairman of the board of Gage Brothers. Joe is active in the Precast Concrete Institute. He's also on the board of directors of the Alta Group, which is a collective group of precast producers from all around the country that are dedicated to advancing precast technology. Joe was born and raised in Fulda, Minnesota, and Joe and his wife, Angel, moved to Sioux Falls to be closer to her parents. They have found Sioux Falls to be a great place to live and work and raise a family. And they have a 16-year-old daughter, Alina, who is a junior at Roosevelt and is very active in orchestra, and a 12-year-old son, Isaac, who is in Memorial Middle School, and he likes to enjoy time with his friends and fishing. Joe has been active at his church at Peace Lutheran, and this is really cool. Joe was a mentor through Lutheran Social Services for 12 years, staying with the same young man for all those 12 years, from first grade on to when he graduated. And Joe would probably like to do that again someday. His wife, Angel, is she owns her own pet care business. And Joe sees himself taking more of a proactive role in the community by participating in more service-oriented roles. And Rotary is just a good place to start, kind of like I had me 20-some years ago. So I want to welcome to you at this time, Joe Bunkers. So Joe.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, fellow Rotarians, for having me today. So I was going to come up here and gush about how great this city is, but, well, I mean, everyone in this room knows that, right? So instead, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for leading us with your time, your talents, your gifts, and setting the stage for us so that my family can move down here, like Tom said, it was almost 23 years ago, and raise a family and find a place that I can call home. Over my 22 years at Gage Brothers, really my only job in Sioux Falls, I started as a drafter. I've journeyed on to be president now, but I've watched the likes of Tom Gage and Tom Kelly, as they were part of this group and many other groups throughout. And I got to see through our work of building this community and our work of leading our employees, really how being part of groups like this and organizations like this help us all and help set the stage for everyone to come to Sioux Falls and prosper. So thank you for accepting me into downtown Rotary. I really look forward to the journey. And I just hope to be able to do one small part to do my share to help make this better for the next generation to come. So thank you.
Don't go too far. I have something for you. Joe, I'm so looking forward to having you as a Rotarian and to get to know you better. And we have another Rotarian to celebrate today. I'd like to invite Michelle Lavallee up to introduce Jen Jones.
Thanks, Cindy. You know how you recognize that special spark in someone, the one who's always intellectually curious, who comes into your office smiling, brimming with enthusiasm and new ideas? That's Jen. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Jen Jones, one of my many mentees, as we induct her into our club. I first met Jen when she was an admissions counselor with a brand new master's degree at the University of South Dakota in 2002, when I served as the chief marketing officer there and the vice president of student services. I brought Jen right into the marketing team, and she created some of our first digital recruitment strategies, which was a new thing at the time. It was during a time when there was a significant drop in high school students in our state. She created multi-state strategies with digital content and strong communications plans to follow. During that period, we recruited more first-time, full-time freshmen, remember that, Jack, with ACTs above 24 than all the Regental schools combined. Jen continued in the higher ed industry, moving to Iowa City to work with the ACT organization. She served as their brand strategist and senior marketing manager, helping to digitalize their product offerings and grow their portfolio. She's run her own business, she's taught in higher ed, and she fed that intellectual curiosity by enrolling in a PhD program at USD. She received her PhD in public administration and leadership in 2020. Jen happily holds 3 degrees from USD, so go Yotes 3 times. Returning to her love of all things tech, she now manages the digital strategy for 44i Digital. Jen can tell you the rest of her story, but let's give her a warm Rotary welcome to the newest member of our club, Jen Jones.
everyone. Well, thank you, Michelle, for such kind words. We were just talking when we were having lunch together. You know, every time I see Michelle again, it's like old times. And we sit and we talk and we chat and we talk about work stuff. And she gives me a couple tips on, you know, where to wear my Rotary badge. It's supposed to go on the right side. So when you shake hands, people can see who you're talking to. And this is important stuff. You know, this is the stuff that nobody tells you, but it makes you successful. So one thing that I just wanted to mention is I'm so glad and grateful to be in Sioux Falls again. You know, I started out in Vermilion at USD and I made my way around to Iowa City, and my career took me to Minneapolis, and I came back here. My grandparents moved to Sioux Falls in the 1930s after my grandpa's farm failed. Moved to Sioux Falls in the 1930s, where they worked at Morel's. My mom went to Washington High School downtown when it was still downtown, and she goes back to the Washington Pavilion, and you know, you can see in her face and her eyes that she's reliving some of her experiences. The State Theater coming to life again, another one where she's really living those experiences and sharing them and telling me, and also telling my son. My son is going to be a junior at Lincoln High School this year. And so that means that 4 generations of my family have lived in Sioux Falls. So no matter where I go, Sioux Falls still always feels like home. And so again, I want to thank you for inducting me into this club, and I look forward to getting to know all of you. Thanks.
I do have to say, from standing up here, and maybe Jack saw it too, everybody looked at their badges to see where they were positioned. So we're going to take a picture here in just a moment, and I'll be right back. I now have the pleasure of introducing today's program. With the celebration of our nation's independence less than a week away, today's program couldn't be more timely. With U.S. military veterans making up about 10% of the state's adult population, South Dakota ranks among those with the highest percentage of former service members. Today's program, Serving Those Who Served, will enlighten all of us on how South Dakota honors, cares, and treats its 65,000 military veterans. We have 3 incredibly knowledgeable experts on stage to discuss challenges, successes, and opportunities in meeting the needs of veterans who have returned to civilian life in the Rushmore State. South Dakota Air National Guard Colonel, did I say that right? Stacy Kooistra, founder and board chairman of the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance. Lisa Simoneau. Simoneau, Lisa Simoneau is the regional CEO of U.S. Veterans Administration Healthcare System here in Sioux Falls. Downtown Rotarian Tyler Jordson, representing U.S. Senator Mike Rounds, is representing the Senator's Southeast Area Regional Director. And of course, our very own Rotarian and lifelong journalist, Jack Marsh, is moderating today's discussion. Jack, take it away.
Thank you, Cindy, and welcome to everybody. That was unanticipated. Are we all set now? Is it coming through now? Try now, Jack. All set? All right, is that any better? There we go. Okay. Excuse our technical difficulties. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. And thank you, Cindy, for that introduction. The title of this program, Serving Those Who Served, How South Dakota Honors, Cares, and Treats its 65,000 military veterans. Cindy Peterson suggested this topic, which is indeed highly relevant as our nation is about to celebrate its 245th birthday next Sunday on July 4th. I think there are a lot of things that we can be proud of in this state, and one, I think, is an incredible record of military service. South Dakota does indeed rank among the states with the highest percentage of military veterans in the country, and that is indeed something to celebrate. A dictionary definition of patriot: a person who vigorously supports their country and is prepared to defend it against enemies and detractors. So today's program will center on how we honor these fellow South Dakotans, true patriots, 65,000 military veterans and their families. Now, this panel was advertised as a 4-member panel, and as you can see, we have 3 panelists today. Colonel Stacy Coistra, who many of you know in town as the city attorney for the city of Sioux Falls, but today is here in his capacity as the founder of the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance, which we're going to be exploring today. Lisa Simoneau, who's the CEO of the U.S. Veterans Administration Healthcare System for the multi-state Sioux Falls region, and then our fellow downtown Rotarian Tyler Jordson, who is representing Senator Mike Rounds, who is a member of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs as well as Military Affairs, the two separate committees. Unable to join us today is Greg Whitlock, who is Secretary of the South Dakota Department of Veterans Affairs. And I've spoken with Greg. Greg had a mishap in his home on a ladder the other day, and he is now nursing some very painful, uncomfortable broken ribs. So we wish him a speedy recovery, but Greg is unable to join us today. This has been an incredibly difficult year for this democratic republic, for our American society. We certainly have been put to the test in ways that we could not have imagined. And so I'd like to begin this today by asking each of the panelists to imagine that you are delivering the 4th of July address. And you can say it's going to be at Mount Rushmore, or you can say it's under the Arc of Dreams, wherever you want. But I'd like each of you just to reflect for a moment about what message you think should be shared with the American public next Sunday as we celebrate perhaps the most patriotic holiday of all, our birth as a nation, 1776, 245 years ago. So I'm just going to go right down the line. I'm going to ask Stacy. So Stacy Coistro, just give us just a minute or two of reflection about the state of our republic, the state of our society.
Well, I guess I would start with your definition of patriot, right? If I'm here in the context of the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance, what I thought was notable about the definition is somebody who's prepared to defend, right? Not those who have defended. And so that would include everyone in this room, and that's certainly the theme of the Alliance, are those 3 population groups, which are our veterans, many of whom, of course, have done that, if not all of them, our active service members, and then the civilian community. And so when I think about America and its state, as we sit here on the 4th of July, and as we reflect on what's gone on over the last 16 months, I guess the theme for me would be hope. One that, America is still here. It's still the same America. We've seen a lot of changes, intense changes over the last 16, 18 months, but they're changes that do not threaten the republic, and that if you bring in all of those patriots, each of those categories, America is doing just fine and will continue to do so, as long as the patriots, those that are interested in being prepared to defend and actually defend, do so.
Lisa Simoneau.
Looking at it from a veterans care standpoint, it's been a rough year with COVID. And a lot of our veterans couldn't come into the city for care and couldn't have direct contact with their healthcare providers. So now we're on the other side, but a lot of these veterans are still nervous and are still isolated. So we encourage everyone to reach out to veterans you know, make sure that they're okay, and to just include them in your events and activities, because it's been a long year for a lot of our veterans with PTSD and other conditions. So please involve them in your community and in your lives. They really appreciate it.
Tyler Jordson.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. I think first and foremost, I just want to, anybody in the room or anybody listening to who have ever put on the uniform, I just want to extend my heartfelt thanks. I come from veterans in my family, not a veteran myself, obviously, but try to do my part assisting the senator from this capacity. I'm a diehard patriotic South Dakotan. I say I'm a dual citizen. I'm also a member of the Simoneau Sioux tribe. So wearing my Native American hat, but also as a proud American. And our country has been through a lot in its almost 245 years of independence. We've seen a lot of change recently. We've seen a lot of change, decades ago, you name it. We've been through a lot. We've continued to overcome, we grow and we adapt. And really, I think my message would be, of hope, but also optimism, that really when you get down and kind of boil it down, there's really not a lot of differences between us. A lot of us want the same things. We want, a good community and place for our kids and our families. And so I try to view things glass half full.
I've had the privilege of getting to know all three of these individuals in different ways. And they all have a good story to tell, an interesting story to tell about the services that they are delivering to our veterans. Either themselves are doing it or on behalf of an organization or an institution. And so I want to give each of them a chance to tell you what they have been up to and give their perspective. It seems to me that one of the distinguishing qualities of our state is that we are nimble. If someone comes up with a good idea, people will get behind it and at least let you try that. And if it succeeds, everybody is all in. We don't need to study things to death. Most of us are on a first name basis, maybe 2 degrees of separation in the state. So you come up with a good idea, and there's a decent chance that it's actually gonna happen. So I want to start with Stacy Coistro, and I've known Stacy as the city attorney. I knew less about his military background, and I didn't know much about the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance. So let's just, I want to tee this up for Stacy, but it was in 2016 when the payday loan industry was essentially shut down in the state. And Chuck Brennan, who was running the Badlands Pawn up on Russell Street, shut down that operation, and it subsequently, the facility, massive facility up there on Russell Street across from the Sheridan and the arena, went up for sale for nearly $13 million. Stacy had an idea that maybe we could bring the veterans organizations of this community together and serve our veterans in a different and innovative way. And I don't want to bury the lead on this as a newspaper man or as a journalist. So the lead is that in 9 months' time, Stacy Coistro, with the help of a lot of other individuals in this community, managed to raise, I think it was over $10 million to launch what is now the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance, that opened just before the pandemic. Matter of fact, the grand opening has yet to occur. And believe me, it will be grand because it's now been in the planning stages it's been in the planning stages for nearly 2 years. So we look forward to that grand opening. Stacy, tell us about where this idea came from and why you think the people of this community, of this state, got behind what is now the South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance?
Well, thanks, Jack. It's kind of a long story, but it's one that I certainly would be privileged to tell. To try to make a very long story short and consumable here in the time we have available, I can tell you that the idea, for what it's worth, was really born out of my active duty Army service. After I graduated from USF, I had a chance to live in Sweden for a time, and then I came back here and enlisted in the Army and was assigned to Germany. And as an enlisted soldier, I had the opportunity to, of course, get the full Army experience, including the heritage component and the pride that comes with the sacrifice. And I had, at that time, I had my degree, and so I had the opportunity to get to go to Officer Candidate School as commissioned in December of 1998 as a military intelligence officer, and spent 3 years with the 1st Infantry Division. And coming out of Fort Benning, that is so steeped in history and heritage, and then transitioning to Fort Riley with its own heritage, it was one that just became really valuable to me as a soldier. And then transitioning home and going to law school, and then transitioning to the Army National Guard, where it has its own story. And then transitioning out of law school into the private practice here in Sioux Falls, and being offered an opportunity to serve as the Deputy Staff Judge Advocate for the 114th Fighter Wing. I learned then too that the Air Force and the Air National Guard has a tremendous heritage. And so from 2007 until present, I've been on the Air National Guard side. Part of my heart remains a soldier. But in 2016, with the payday loan thing, which I was just a neutral observer on all of that, but when that transition occurred, I had, it was announced that place was closing. I thought I just wanted to see it. It was just a curiosity, a strange thing. So on a Saturday morning, I spent about 10 minutes walking through the facility, and it just occurred to me that this would be a really cool military veteran facility. It was about that easy. My kids were in the van watching a movie, and so I snuck through, found it strange to see a bunch of used televisions and tools in this amazing place, and did nothing with it. And then in 2018, NAI, I see Dennis Bresky sitting in here, and Dale Zomer listed that property for sale, and I had gone to church with Dale, and so I took him out for lunch and told him my thoughts on it, and he liked it and roped in Dennis, and in 2018 we had lunch and talked about it, and Dennis was supportive, and then set up a phone call with Chuck Brennan. We visited with Chuck. I've never met the gentleman, and hadn't at that time, and we talked through it, and he was supportive of it. And so I started a nonprofit, and an attorney, and incorporated it, and entered into a purchase agreement, long story short, with Chuck Brennan for $9 million purchase price for it and everything in it, and the neighboring building. And I had a period of 4 months to raise the money, and about 3.5 months I had raised $0, because I don't know how to raise money. I'd never raised money. But I met a gentleman named Tony Boer, who Dennis sent my way, and that changed the course of the alliance forever. And Tony gave him a tour, and about an hour after that tour, he sent me an email, said, "We're going to take this fundraising effort to a whole new level," which at $0 wasn't but he did, and over the next various months, he connected with people in the community, and some are here. See Paul Weckman and Dave Rosenboom, and so many people in the community that, as we just tried to explain what that concept is, and refined it, of course, and took input from a lot of like-minded people, and it went and was fortunate to get the endorsement of 14 veterans organizations here in Sioux Falls, we got a document to that effect, and we were able to use that. And it just from there, you know, in being an active member of the National Guard, it gave me an opportunity to speak to some of the senior leaders there who were supportive. And so I would go back to the definition of patriot, which is you do not have to be an active duty member or a veteran, but it takes a community. And this community responded in a way that is really hard to describe. And, you know, it often reminds me of the quote that many things have been accomplished by people not smart enough to know they're impossible. So there's a grossly oversimplified summary of how it played out.
So what is going on Russell Street? What is the Alliance?
Well, the Alliance is a 70,000 square foot facility that has everything from a concert venue to a gun range and a bar, lounge, and restaurant. It houses our VFW and American Legion posts. They all voted to move in and contribute, and it's open to the community. There are events going on. Yesterday, there was a lighted up event in the entertainment complex. There on Saturday, the Keystone founders had their retirement ceremony there. There have been civic events, the state cemetery dedication, ribbon cutting. They had events at the Alliance, and it's just it's available. And the goal is to be the most innovative facility in America. And in all candor, the out-of-state people that we've had come into the Alliance, to a person, they have stated that they want one. And so we've been engaged with people in Kansas City and St. Louis and Arizona, and even in state and Aberdeen and those areas, to try to take a model of you know, what are struggling veteran organizations with declining populations and aging membership, and reinvigorating them a bit, because that's where the rubber meets the road. The Alliance is not a veterans organization. We don't deliver services. We support the VA. We support, and it's not me. I'm not operational in that regard, but down to the family visitation group out at the base, or the family volunteer group rather. And I'll give you this example if I have time. So Major General McGuire from Arizona, he was the adjutant general there. And he is now the president of NAUGUS, which is the National Guard Association of the United States. And he came and visited one of our generals, Greg Lair, brought him in and said, you should see this. And he said, Arizona needs one of these. And his question at the time was, well, how does this work that you can have contracts with the Department of Defense or the Air National Guard or the Air Force or whatever? And if there's a secret to it, it's Sioux Falls, right? Because there aren't any contractual relationships there. By the bylaws, it's advantageous to have those types of events, and we and the staff, Brian Phelps, our executive director, and the leadership are going to make all those happen. Down to we're working on having a young lady who enlisted in the Navy, and it's her mom's baby, and we're going to bring in some veterans. Looking at you, Paul Weckman, Navy captain. And having a little fun with one young lady who's joining, right? Who's taking the oath and saying, hey, this city is here, from our veterans to our active folks to whoever. And we're going to support you all the way through to when the 196 MEB was gone and we had an event for their families. And just, you know, it's our imaginations collectively are really the only limit on this. And it started with a unicorn of a facility that it's state of the art, and it's a crazy thing.
When I talked to Greg Whitlock I talked to him last Friday, where he told me he couldn't make it today. He was our state secretary of Veterans Affairs. He said that what has been created at the Alliance is a model for the nation, and it came from one person's idea. And then a lot of people got on board, and many of those people are represented in this room today, and the supporters of the Military Heritage Alliance. So congratulations on giving birth to something quite extraordinary. Lisa Simoneau has had a career in the VA, but it was in January of 2020. You remember what it used to be like in January of 2020? And she got the assignment to take over as the CEO of the Sioux Falls region, which is a multi-state region. It includes eastern South Dakota. Make sure I got this right, Lisa. Southwestern Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, and northeastern Nebraska. The VA health system is the largest health system in the United States by far. And Lisa came here not too long after. There had been a lot of controversy with VA health facilities and the VA health system throughout the country. But what she found when she came here was maybe we didn't have all the same problems that had surfaced elsewhere. But Lisa, talk to us and tell us what is going on with your region of the VA healthcare system in Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls is doing some great things. As soon as I got here, we locked down with COVID. And this is my first CEO assignment, so it was a great way to break me in. We were actually quite full. We had 2 patients in each bed for a while. The staff just stepped right up.
Not in each bed.
Oh, each room.
Each room.
Sorry. Togetherness.
Veterans, that's how they.
Yeah.
Get it done.
But the staff just stepped up. It's like they instinctually knew what to do. We'd never faced something like this in healthcare before. And this team, I'd heard such wonderful things before I came here, and everything they said was true. When I got here, Sioux Falls was the #1 level 2, which is a regular medical center, in the VA in the nation for customer service. Fargo just beat us. We have to get it back from Fargo, but now we're #2. The veterans love their providers in the VA. Right now, they're doing what's called a trust score. They started this right before COVID started. And they asked the question, I trust my medical center with my healthcare needs. And if you score a 4 or 5, it counts towards the trust score. Sioux Falls is 94% for trust. And right now, the nation's at 90%. So we're one of the leaders in the nation for the trust score. It's just been fantastic. We've given 18,500 shots to veterans and their caregivers and spouses. We have had COVID vaccine clinics throughout the nation. We've been really good in recruiting this year. Some of the providers who worked on the East Coast kind of got burned out and said, we want to go back to our roots. As a result, we've been able to hire pulmonologists and endocrinologists. We've expanded home-based primary care in Mitchell because we had someone who wanted to live in Mitchell. And we're just expanding our services and making sure we can provide as much as we can to our veterans.
So what is under the VA region? What the hospital here, but it's much more than that. So what are the range of services, medical services, mental health services that are provided by the regional VA?
So at the main facility here, the Royal C. Jordson Medical Center, we have inpatient surgery, mental health, med-surg. We have a community living center. It's kind of like a nursing home, but not really. It's a little long-term care and a lot of rehabilitation. That's all in the main building. We have primary care, mental health, specialty care, specialty surgery. We provide the full spectrum of care for veterans. If we can't provide it, there are opportunities to outsource it into the community. We work very closely with Sanford. And there's also a lot of telehealth ability. So one of the things we can't get is oncologist well. We can get mid-levels, but we can't get oncologists. We are able to provide in a partnership with the Durham, North Carolina VA and Duke University so that we have a full oncology clinic here in Sioux Falls. We also have 5 clinics. 4 of them are large outpatient centers: Aberdeen, Watertown, Spirit Lake, Iowa, and Sioux City, Dakota Dunes. These are large primary care clinics. They also have mental health on site. Some of them have physical therapy, audiology, optometry. Spirit Lake, we just found a cardiologist who wanted to work in Spirit Lake. So they provide as much service as they can, and it's all tied together with telemedicine. So if you're being seen in Dakota Dunes, you can connect with a specialist in Sioux Falls, either on your telephone or coming into the clinic for the high-tech cameras that can look at skin lesions or take your vital signs. We also have an outreach clinic in Wagner at the Indian Health Service, and that provides primary care and mental health services.
So South Dakota, there are at least 2 different regions that cover the VA that cover South Dakota. South Dakota has actually 3 different VA facilities here in Sioux Falls, in Sturgis, and at Hot Springs. And I know that one source of pride is that we have 3 VA facilities. North Dakota only has 1. So I think that's a source of some pride. So thank you, Lisa. Next is Tyler Jordson, and Tyler is here today representing Senator Mike Rounds, who serves on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And one of Tyler's responsibilities is really constituent service. And I know that a lot of folks who are trying to navigate through the VA, either on the benefits side or on the healthcare side, call your office. So Tyler, talk about about how a Senate office, whether it's your Senator Rounds' office or Senator Thune's office or Dusty Johnson's office, for that matter, how you help folks navigate through the bureaucracy and through those services, and also maybe just touch, well, what are the senator's priorities legislatively in his position in the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, you bet. So I'll try to give a broad overview of what a congressional office does, because I think not enough people really realize kind of the functions that we can do and what we do on a day-to-day. So I'll do that, try to boil it down, and then get to your second question too. And I'll try to be as brief as I can on that. Worst case, I'll just borrow Secretary Whitlock's time. But everybody knows that you can call your congressman, right? To encourage them to vote a certain way, or to provide complaints or comments, feedback, that kind of thing. Most people realize too that we have a DC office, and that's where they assist the senator on legislation and policy. A lot of people, maybe for better or for worse, don't really realize that we have state offices strategically located across the state. So for Senator Rounds' office specifically, we have offices in Rapid City, Pierre, Aberdeen, and Sioux Falls. And we have dedicated staff that are primarily in the constituent service side. We do assist our policy team or DC colleagues by being the eyes and ears on the ground here. And so we really work together across the board like that. But in our state offices, the way I kind of summarize it is that we do three core functions, 3 buckets: correspondence, casework, and outreach. The correspondence side, we try to be as available for constituents however we can. So allowing them to walk into our physical office, call in, write in, email, fax, you name it. We want to be able to give them the opportunity to ask questions and us to be able to follow up, or for them to be able to pass on their comments or their request. The second bucket, casework, we have staff that primarily work on cases for constituents, wherever they need assistance with the federal government, federal agencies. And we tell people we can't force any outcomes, we can't make things happen. We have certain rules and ethics we got to follow, and certain procedures that we do it, but we will certainly look into it. We'll do what we can to help.
So what would bring somebody to your office when their matter is pending before the VA? And what kind of volume are you dealing with?
Yeah, so Veteran Affairs specific on the casework side. So since my cousin's been in office, going on about 6.5 years now, we've had about almost 3,700 cases total. Not correspondence, right? Not the incoming messages, but actual cases that we work on. Veteran Affairs or veteran tagged related cases, we're about 950, almost 1,000 cases. So right now it's about 25%. Historically, it was as high as 50 when we first got into office. It's been down a little bit. I think it's been deflated a little bit with, in the last year, we've had a lot of IRS casework. And so casework, kind of the definition on casework for us, I mean, it's, people having passport issues with the State Department, IRS issues, like I said, we've seen in the last year or so with all the COVID related items, VA, and that could be Veteran Affairs, healthcare side, that could be on the benefit side, and everything in between. I mean, any federal agency you can think of, OPM for federal employees, IHS for Indian Health Service members, you name it. So there's tons of aspects like that.
So 25% of your constituent calls, inquiries relate to veterans issues. Does that indicate we have a big problem? Does that indicate, in fact, that because you've seen a drop in that volume, that we're doing well? What's your assessment of
I would tell you that I think
how we're doing in serving our veterans?
Yeah. So to clarify, veteran-related issues in South Dakota for our congressional offices is the number one subject. That's the one where we see the highest volume, and it has been since day one. And again, I think that's deflated because it's not because the cases have gone down. I think a lot of it was access. We didn't have veterans walking in on a daily basis like we used to pre-COVID. Our offices are open. We've been open. We've been working, again, in all of our locations. So I don't think that those cases have stopped. They certainly, issues that arise, we see, I think they ebb and flow depending on what it may be, with different legislative issues that come up, like Choice Act, when that came out in 2014, 2015.
Which is now called the Mission Program?
Mission Act was basically Choice 2.0, and that's been implemented in the last couple of years.
Which provides that veterans, if they can't receive services directly at a VA hospital, they can go to their local physician, their primary care provider, and the VA will cover that expense. Is that correct?
Ideally.
Partially.
Partially, okay, all right.
There's some eligibility hoops you got to jump through, and then.
So Tyler, how are we doing on that? On the Choice 2.0, as you call it, the Mission Act?
Yeah. So and some of the folks in the room will know too. I mean, we've seen issues that, and every case is unique. So I won't get into like very specific examples for individuals. Cases we can open and close within 24 hours. Sometimes it's just not being able to get a hold of somebody to get an appointment scheduled. Maybe it's a prescription issue. Maybe it's just an inquiry of wondering who to talk to or where to go. There's a lot of resources available, and sometimes we just have to be that bridge to help connect the dots. Other cases we work on for 4 years, and just checking in. What maybe it's an appeal thing on the benefit side. So it again, they're all unique and they vary. We've also had payments to provider issues on the Choice program. That's been difficult over the last couple of years, whether it's our large healthcare systems across the state, or whether it's the local community hospitals, or it could be the local, like really small, chiropractors or different facilities too that are having issues, whether it's a regional issue or a nationwide issue or a local issue on the referral piece, with, getting the provider getting reimbursed. And if they don't get reimbursed, it's not that they just totally write it off and it goes away. It goes back on the veteran or the patient too. And so trying to tackle that where we can. There's a lot of different complexities, which I think play into that.
So let's for all three of you, let's look ahead now. If I think there is consensus here that in South Dakota, and whether it's your region, Lisa, or beyond, that generally we take our responsibility very seriously to serve those who served. We don't have a lot of things that are broken in this state. But my question is, how do we then go from good to great? What are the opportunities to provide even better services for our veterans and their families, and anybody? Any can speak to this. What do we really need to do to achieve a level of excellence?
Yeah, I'll go first quick, just keep rattling. So we do get veterans that come in. We try to make it a point of asking them, and we're blessed to have veterans on staff. I got a couple of my guests here that came in. Bob DeYoung is one of our caseworkers, our CSRs in our Sioux Falls office. We have other veterans on staff in our DC office or in Rapid City too. So there are, again, a lot of resources out there and a lot of resources available. It's just a matter of kind of pointing them in the right direction. Senator Rounds, with his responsibility, you mentioned he's on the Veteran Affairs Committee. He's been on the Veteran Affairs Committee his entire time in Congress. And through that, through different administrations, we're in a new administration this year. And with new Congress, this is the first time we're in the minority in the Senate. So that's relatively different. The nice thing about the Veteran Affairs Committee in Congress is that that's one that you can really see bipartisan stuff get passed. And so, I think Senator Rounds, through his role and us as staff assisting him, there's an opportunity for us to continue to move the needle in the right direction, to provide, our veterans with the, some of the services and benefits that they were promised, and for their courage and sacrifice in defending our country. And so, and sometimes that's through administrative fixes. It's working with the administration, working with the secretary to find easier solutions that they can do instead of us trying to get legislation passed, which is a little bit more difficult. But through legislative or administrative actions are ways that we can really kind of move the needle.
Okay. Stacy or Lisa, how do we move to the next level?
Well, I guess in my lane, and I think of what the Alliance may be able to do, and I like to think South Dakota, if we're not number one already, we're close. But any role the Alliance can play in putting South Dakota so far into that great category, right? Because the Alliance's role, as I touched on earlier, is to support the VA and the American Legion, the VFW, and the Air National Guard. And I can think of two instances where Brian, our executive director, told me that a veteran came in and at the front just broke down, right? Was really struggling but knew to come there, and they could walk him right over to the South Dakota Department of Veterans Affairs or the American Legion or the VFW or Sanford's military and veteran offices. And that you said we're nimble, right? Part of the reason we're nimble is we're not that large, but we are large, right? And so, again, in any way that we can pool those resources, if there's any magic, not that there is to the Alliance, part of it is the foot stomping emphasis through the process of explaining this has been, it's not to replace, it's not to diminish any particular organization, it's to preserve the identity of each and lift them up. Because the veteran and military industry is an alphabet soup, right? And to the individual soldier, airman, sailor, Marine, whoever, that's a confusing thing. And to the extent you can simplify it, and in South Dakota, I think we've got that potential because of our size and the direct access we have to our leaders and an existing amazing VA system. Some of it is all the tools are there, and in some respects we don't need more organizations to fix this. It's there's a synergy there that hasn't always existed.
Lisa, how do we move from good to great?
It's always looking at our processes. When I got to Sioux Falls, one of the problems we did have was with the Mission Act. We were very backed up on our consultations. And we got a team into our Care in the Community office. We looked at our processes, and we were backed up very badly. We're now one of the top in the nation. 94% of our consults are scheduled within 7 days. The ones that aren't are the more complex, where we need to find a provider that can really provide the service that the veteran needs. We've opened a call center so that they know where to call. Problem is, it's been so popular that now we need to get more people on the call center. We're partnering in the community. So we're partnering with Sanford on a program called the Phaser Project. And what Phaser does is it provides for free pharmacogenomic testing to our veterans. And we're starting off with cancer. So if you have cancer, we can run tests with Sanford that will help us tailor the treatment to the type of cancer and the veteran's genetics. And this way we can minimize the damage that some of these cancer drugs can do and increase the chances of a very good outcome. So we'll be starting these treatments by the end of the year. All of the agreements are signed. We just have to get people on board. We're also doing a lot of infrastructure updates to improve our care to veterans. If you drive down 22nd Street, you're going to see the mental health building coming up. It sat dormant for 13 months, but it's now going back up, and we should be able to open that in 2023. We also recently got approved for a hospice building. So on 22nd Street, you'll see a 10-bed hospice building starting in the fall. And this way we'll be able to take our dying veterans out of the busy medical center and put them in a home-like environment. where
Because
their
you now have
family-
hospice beds, but within the hospital, correct?
We do. They're mixed in with the rehabilitation and the long-term care beds. So this will be a home-like environment where the families can get better access to support services, and the veteran has a more home-like environment when they can't be at home.
Very good. Before we wrap this up, there's one very serious topic I'd like to raise with all three of you, and that is the topic of mental health for our veterans and their families. Brown University came out with a study last week talking about the gravity of the suicide epidemic we have with active duty military as well as our veterans. This study concluded that since 9/11, we have lost just over 7,000 service members killed in war operations, 7,000, but that we have lost over 30,000 active duty and veterans to suicide. How can we address this and provide the help that our veterans need, whether it's PTSD or it's addiction and related matters or it's depression, whatever. But this is horrendous. This is horrendous. And I know that the local VA is building this outpatient facility for mental health. But what wisdom can the three of you share on this topic? How are we going to address this as a nation?
Can I start? One of the things with this is we have to look at this as a nation. The VA can't solve this alone. Many of the veterans who end up committing suicide have never been to a VA. And that could be because they don't qualify for care or because they made the choice not to come to the VA. So we have a suicide prevention team, and they're working in the community to establish suicide prevention coalitions. Right now we have 12. We have 2 more that are about to take off. These groups are doing outreach to veterans' families to let them know what the warning signs are, to let them know some of the challenges that their loved ones are facing transitioning back into civilian life that they may not be aware of, they may be trying to shield their family from. So if you have the opportunity, take part in these coalitions because we need everyone to get the word out to these family members so they can help us find the warning signs and get these veterans the care they need immediately, whether it's in the VA or whether it's in the community. We're here to help, but if we don't work together, we're going to miss people, and they really do need our help.
Tyler?
Yeah, I would say building off of that a little bit, looking at it from kind of a legislative angle, a couple quick items I'll highlight. So like in the CARES Act, which was kind of the first big package that came out last year, there was a telemental health provision in there too, that would have provided resources and opportunities for telecommunication companies to partner with the VA to help reach more veterans where they are.
Which is very important in a rural state like South Dakota.
Absolutely. And so that was one. There was also I spoke about bipartisanship earlier. Senator Tester from Montana, who's been a longtime member on the Veteran Affairs Committee, introduced a bill named after a veteran from Montana too, the Commander John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act. That was one that Senator Rounds co-sponsored, and that one was signed into law by President Trump in October of 2020. And so that one, I'm sure is probably still in the implementation phases, but that one is really going to help improve mental health and suicide prevention teams with our different VAs across the nation, outreach efforts. It's just a huge package that's really gonna help there too. And then there's one Senate Bill 544, the Buddy Check Week legislation that was introduced by Senator Ernst that Senator Rounds is a co-sponsor on too. And so again, legislatively, there's some avenues there that we're trying to do whatever we can. And again, that's one that these kind of conversations aren't partisan.
Stacy?
Well, you know, when I look back on my active duty time, and I had 5.5 years, and was all over the place, 3 continents, and but was blessed to not suffer from PTSD and those sort of things, because I wasn't in a lot of those circumstances. And when I came back home, it was it's a transition. You know, I was in a combat unit, an armor battalion, and that's a pretty intense experience. And then you come back home and everybody's different, right? I came to the same area, but everybody's hair were longer, so they were a bunch of hippies. They're out of shape. They aren't waking up at 5 a.m. doing whatever. And so, you know, to hit these guys and gals where they live, right? Like, it's tricky for everybody. And to hit them where you live, I think you have to think differently. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because as a JAG officer in the military, I was part of kicking a lot of people out, right? And there are untold millions of dollars thrown at sexual harassment, alcohol, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of those things, right? And practically speaking, the Air Force came out a couple of years ago and said, we haven't moved a needle in 10 years, right? And so there has to be a different mentality of as to how to approach it. And there's no magic formula, but you know, in our community, we're trying something different to say, okay, Legion, with all your resources, and VFW and National Guard, what can we do to, you know, to give an experience that's comparable to what you experienced when you were on active duty, the camaraderie component, the pride of service, the heritage component, to say, hey, I mattered. You know, one of the hardest parts of military service is being gone and thinking nobody's aware of me, right? And to bring them home and to say, our community did this for you because of what you did for us. And so, you know, our future, hopefully here is you know, it's as one-off as it may sound, would be a museum, right? A heritage center that says, here in South Dakota, we are going to preserve what you've done. And I'll give you an example. When we went on a family vacation years ago to San Diego, and we went to the USS Midway, and they had docents there. A docent is a veteran who's wearing a red vest that escorts people around this aircraft carrier and says, this is what this does, this is what I did. And these kids, right, are eating it up. Well, we've got kids. I'll give you this example. When this museum thing came around, there are 5 female fighter pilots in the Air National Guard nationwide, right? There are 2 of them a minute from the Alliance. And one of them, I talked to her. She would love the opportunity to have field trips, and 250, this place has space for 300 girls to sit there and hear from her. That's rewarding on both sides of the house, right? And so, I mean, when you get down to the granular and individual service member and veteran up to what does a community do, I just think as a community and as a state and as a nation, we've got to think differently. And the Alliance is not a panacea for those things. But the people I see in this room who have supported the Alliance and working with the VA and Tyler and the other elected officials and all of that, just, you know, avoiding it's President Trump's Prevents Act, right? We've got to sort through this spaghetti noodle of veteran services and just make it easier. And so hopefully the Alliance plays a narrow role in that, but it's the potential is there.
You can see we could go so deep on these topics, and it's I wish that Greg Whitlock could have been with us here today too, because I spoke with him last week, and there's so much good that's being done by the state and by our counties. You know, we have veteran services officers serving all 66 counties in South Dakota. Greg talked about Dennis Dugard when he was governor, broke off the Department of Veterans Affairs and Veterans Affairs. No, I'm sorry, broke apart the combined Department of Military Affairs and Veterans Affairs, so that Veterans Affairs has its own department in the state. You know, evidence of what we were able to achieve here. This new state veterans secretary just outside of Sioux Falls, 50 burials in just this month alone, serving an unmet need because so many veterans and families. It's too far to go to Sturgis for the National Cemetery, and now we have a state veterans secretary right here in eastern South Dakota. So we certainly want to wish Greg full recovery from his injuries, and wish he could have been here. And the next time we do a panel on Veterans Affairs, we're going to be sure to include him. I'd like to thank these outstanding, dedicated individuals. In the case of Stacy for his military service, as well as his community leadership, for Lisa for her important work as our regional VA director, and to Tyler and certainly to Senator Rounds for their leadership nationally, as well as providing services to our veterans right here in South Dakota. And with that, I'm going to call Cindy back up, and we thank our panel.
Jack, yes, thank you so much for being here. A reminder that we do not have a meeting next Monday, July 5th. July 12th will be our annual meeting. At that time, we will present the Rotarian of the Year award, plus Congressman Dusty Johnson will be our guest. Rotary is adjourned.